Israeli News Live. Very provocative broadcast here today. This will be a prophetic insight. I have found an amazing passage that is fulfilling biblical prophecy in the very hour that we are looking at right now. It's going to be in one that you never probably would have imagined. I would not have imagined if it hadn't have been for the in-depth word study that I've done on the book of Zechariah chapter 12. Now, you're looking at the beautiful city of gold, the city of Jerusalem here from the online magazine called tabletmag.com. And the article that they published here is Floridian Congressman touts U.S. Embassy move to Jerusalem, tours potential sites. And that, of course, is none other than Florida Congressman Ron DeSantis, who is a Republican of Florida. He's pro-Trump and as well as pro-Israel. This is something that some people may wonder, is it fulfilling biblical prophecy, the moving of the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem? Well, not so much the moving of the U.S. Embassy itself directly would be prophecy, but I can tell you one thing's for sure. There is clearly prophecy being fulfilled from the book of Zechariah chapter 12, and this moving of the U.S. Embassy has a lot to do with just that. And we're going to break this down so you can see it. I'm sure many of you that know the book of Zechariah are probably scratching your head right about now saying, wait a minute, are you serious? Are you talking about the moving of the embassy is fulfilling biblical prophecy? How could this actually be? It's going to startle you without a doubt. Let's go right into the scriptures on this here. The burden of the word of the Lord for Israel, saith the Lord, which stretcheth forth the heavens and layeth the foundation of the earth and formeth the spirit of man within him. Behold, I will make Jerusalem a cup of trembling unto all people round about, when they shall be in siege both against Judah and against Jerusalem. Now you have to look at this very carefully and watch. I'm going to go through this very how would you say, slowly, cautiously, so you can really catch the feel of what's happening here. Now watch what's happening. Behold, I will make Jerusalem a cup of trembling unto all the people round about where? Israel, round about Jerusalem, when they shall be in the siege, both against Judah, the Jewish people of today, the house of Judah, and against Jerusalem. So it's not only the fact that the nations that have been surrounding Israel, be it Jordan, be it Syria, be it Lebanon, be it the Jordanian people that are called the Palestinians inside the West Bank, or whether it be the Egyptians on the south or the Saudis to the other part of the further far eastern south there, just south of Jordan. All these countries have been against Israel from being a nation. They don't like it. They've warred against Israel on multiple occasions, especially in 1967 war. We saw this happen. And now they have been laying a siege against Judah, or the house of Judah, ever since they've returned back to their homeland. But now the siege is not just over Judah, but it's over Jerusalem. Because why? 1967, the Jewish people, the Israelis that are living there now, captured Jerusalem, which was supposed to be part of an international domain based on the 1947 UN Resolution 181. Now that UN Resolution 181 really is not authentic, or cannot be authenticated, because 1922, all the land west of the Jordan River was promised for a quote-unquote Jewish homeland. That, of course, has been toppled time and time again, but we won't go into that at this point right now. What I want to share with you, though, is this amazing prophecy here, and to show you what's happening. So they're in siege against both Judah and against Jerusalem. And the fact is they don't want, if Israel is going to live in the land, they definitely don't want them having Jerusalem. Like, again, we said 1947, Resolution 181 was going to carve the land up once again, taking away what was promised for a Jewish homeland in 1922 by the League of Nations. And now they're going to carve it up and give it to a Jordanian, Egyptian people that have come in and occupied Gaza and the West Bank. Okay, and Jerusalem was going to be set aside as an international city. So ever since then, there's been a major fight, especially by the Vatican, to gain control of Jerusalem somehow, one way or the other. And that's why the Vatican has really pushed for the Palestinian people Daniel chapter 11's prophecy there, where it says they will come up strong with a small people. That's your Palestinians, and they're using them to try to get a hold of Jerusalem so that they can have their own little domain there inside of Jerusalem. But they're not going to get all of it. Part of it, yes. No doubt the west part, yes. And keep in mind, as you listen to this broadcast, what we're seeing here in prophecy in Zechariah doesn't mean that they won't carve up and the Palestinians end up with the West Bank. That may still happen, but it's Jerusalem is where the siege comes into play now. Let's move on as we look at this prophecy here. First, let's take a look at another article here on Breitbart News. Arab foreign ministers discuss blocking the U.S. embassy move to Jerusalem. That's why you see the scripture saying that there is a siege against both Judah and Jerusalem. Now the siege is against Jerusalem because of the fact that President Donald Trump has said that he will move the embassy to Jerusalem. Now, he kind of backed off once he became the president because so much tensions with the neighbors of Israel against the idea of moving the embassy to Jerusalem. He's caught a lot of flack for it. But now we have the delegation that goes there, and he's getting more and more support with people inside his own administration as well as with Congress and others that are really pro for moving the embassy. Which you have to remember, in 1995, both the Senate and the Congress overwhelmingly approved moving the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. So he's got the right to move it. It's there. The Congress and the Senate have backed it. Can't say they would back it today, but I'm sure they could still get a majority vote for this no matter which way that were to go. All right, so Arab foreign ministers discussed blocking U.S. Embassy move to Jerusalem. Says ahead of an Arab League summit later this month, foreign ministers of a member of states gathered in Cairo on Sunday and Monday to discuss how to prevent President Donald Trump from going through with his promise to move the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. The Hebrew news site NRG reported. All right, this has been spearheaded by the Palestinian Authority, no doubt. Now, this was on March the 6th. This article came out on Breitbart News. It says, in January, the League Assistant Secretary General for Palestinian Affairs, Saadi Abu Ali, urged Trump to reconsider the embassy move, or else the U.S. will be in danger of losing its status as an objective sponsor of the peace process. Ben Ali said, and another item to be discussed by representatives of the member states is the Arab League's plan to curb the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction in the Middle East. He added that ahead of the summit in Jordan on March the 23rd. So there's a lot of pressure on President Trump not to go ahead with this move. But let's look more at the prophecies that are written here. We get to verse 3. And in that day will I make Jerusalem a burdensome stone for all people. All that burden themselves with it shall be cut in pieces, though all the people of the earth be gathered together against it. Now we saw this prophecy fulfilling itself just recently, and of course it's been going on a lot longer than that, but to give you another example, was the very meeting that we covered, my wife and I, in Paris. The summit urged for the two-state solution to Israeli-Palestinian conflict, January 15, 2017. John Kerry, the former Secretary of State, really pushing this with President Barack Hussein Obama, trying to force that, get the nations together to force Israel into accepting a two-state solution. And again, like I said, it doesn't mean the prophecies of Zechariah doesn't mean that they're not going to end up with still a two-state solution, but it's something altogether different. So let's continue on. Now we're going to kind of break it down a little bit here. Let me back up. So in that day, as it says here, saith the Lord, I will smite, and it shall come to pass in that day that I will make Jerusalem a burdensome stone, right? All that burden themselves with it shall be sore wounded, and all the nations of the earth shall be gathered together against it. Again, prophecy we're seeing. 75 nations gathered against Israel in January 15th there at the United Nations, one of their headquarters there inside of Paris, France. Watch verse 4. In that day, says the Lord, I will smite every horse with bewilderment, and his rider with madness. All right? Now, you could translate that when it says here, kosus betimechon. It could be each horse with bewilderment. Now, see, the horse here represents the military power. But why is the horse, in this case here, why is every horse in astonishment might be another words. The horse itself is astonished at what? At the rider. Because the rider is insane. And who's the one that is riding the military powers of the United Nations, but none other than the Pope of Rome himself? He's the one that rides that horse. He's the one that rides each one of these horses here. And these horses are all in astonishment. In other words, the militaries are in astonishment of what he'd like to do. Because he's mad. He says, and I will open mine eyes upon the house of Judah. Now that's God. He didn't say he's going to open Judah's eyes, but God begins to open his own eyes. Now he begins to take notice of the house of Judah, not the house of Israel, mind you. We've still got 9 tribes that have not come home to Israel. We've only got the house of Judah, which is the Levites. We have also the tribe of Judah and the tribe of Benjamin, and of course you have the Samaritans. And some of the Palestinians may consider to be part Samaritans. I can't say they're not. All right? So you have this group there, and God says his eyes will open upon the house of Judah. He says, I will smite every horse of the peoples with blindness. That's also the word there that's used right here in Hebrew, be'i-oron. It's almost, it doesn't have to be totally blind like dark, but to the point of they just can't see clearly. And that's exactly what's happened. And he will smite every horse of the peoples. Which peoples? Well, all you got to do is back up a little bit here. Behold, I will make Jerusalem a cup of trembling or staggering unto all the peoples round about. There's your peoples. Round about, and upon Judah also shall fall to be a siege against Jerusalem. All right, so all the peoples that are round about Israel, their horses, their military powers, is he going to blind them? Now, what does he mean by blinding them? I don't know for sure, but I can tell you one thing. What you're about to see next is what's going to blow you away. Verse 5, all right? And the chiefs of Judah shall say in their hearts, the inhabitants of Jerusalem are my strength, though the Lord of hosts, through the Lord of hosts, their God. Let me give that to you guys here. I'll use the King James Version for you, for those of you more used to using this here. And the governors of Judah shall say in their heart, the inhabitants of Jerusalem shall be my strength, and the Lord of hosts their God. Now, this is not speaking about the Israeli parliament. It can't be. You know how you know? Because it says, the governors of Judah shall say in their heart, the inhabitants of Jerusalem shall be my strength, and the Lord of hosts their God. So their God, okay, let's look at it in the Hebrew language here to make it a little bit more simple here. All right, the inhabitants of Jerusalem are my strength, and through the Lord of hosts their God. All right, now this word right here, alufi. Okay, aluf is actually the root of the word right here. All right, so ve'amru alufi Yehuda belebam, in your heart, they're saying belebam amatzuli yashvi Yerushalayim. What is happening right here? The word aluf here is actually more like the word, it's like a chief friend. It's the closest friend you have. And it's the chief friend of the inhabitants of Jerusalem. And right now, the inhabitants of Jerusalem are the Jewish people. All right? So the chief friend, and that actually can be applied to a military type of friend or a leader or a governor. But the chief friends of Judah, in other words, shall say in their hearts, the inhabitants of Jerusalem are my strength. In other words, those governors or those closest friends to the house of Judah know in their heart that if you bless Israel, God will bless you. Now I'm going to give you a good example of this, and this here is Michelle Bachmann. She is on a radio show, this CNSnews.com. They give a little report of what she said here. I'm going to play for you what she says here. It's very interesting, all right, because you have to keep in mind Michelle Bachmann also is was one of the advisors for President Trump during his campaign. So I want you to listen to what she has to say here on this program just real quick.
He himself...
Sorry, a little bit too loud. Let me back down just a little bit here.
...intervened...
Still too loud. Okay.
...purposely to undermine Netanyahu, and Obama doesn't deny it. So the United States, if those of us who believe in the biblical admonition in Genesis, that those who bless Israel are blessed and those who curse Israel are cursed, we recognize that the United States, as a country, has been in a position of cursing Israel. And we know that that redounds to negative consequences for our country. I think now, happily, we're looking at a different situation where the incoming president appears that he wants to be in a position of blessing. How does the State Department, how does the United States government bless or curse? And you brought it up yourself with the State Department. Well, we've seen such evil come out of our State Department.
Now, I think just the short, brief words of Michelle Bachmann there clearly have identified who these friends of Judah, friends not just normal friends, but leaders. And the governors of Judah are the friends of Judah. It doesn't use the word chavrim in Hebrew. Aluf is a different type of word. That's why I say it's very, very difficult to translate the word. All right, but these leaders, these even the word ox can be used there, but it's not the word for ox either. But they are leaders that are friends of Judah, shall say in their heart, the inhabitants of Jerusalem shall be my strength in the Lord of hosts, their God. So in other words, if we bless them, God will bless us as well. So finally, you get an administration, and I don't care what people think about President Donald Trump. I don't say that President Donald Trump makes every decision perfectly in the right way of doing it. I'm not here to criticize or to lift him up in either way. What I'm showing you is that not only him as in his administration, but he has key people both in Congress and the Senate as well as in his own administration that have realized that if you bless Israel, God is going to bless you. And so they have said in their hearts that the inhabitants of Jerusalem shall be my strength and the Lord of hosts their God. Now watch what happens here. In that day will I make the governors of Judah like an earth of fire among the wood, and like a torch of fire in a sheaf, and they shall devour all the people round about on the right hand and on the left hand, and Jerusalem shall be inhabited again in her own place, even in Jerusalem. All right, so therefore, Israel is not going to lose Jerusalem. Doesn't say anything about the West Bank. Doesn't say anything about whether or not they may not end up having to cave into a two-state solution. But under this administration that you have now with Donald Trump, they will actually become a torch of fire in a sheaf and amongst dry wood. All right? And they shall devour all the people round about on the right hand and on the left. Now, does that mean physically by war? I can't say yay or nay. I don't know. I don't know, friends. All right, but let me share with you some other interesting things here. Trump has every intention of recognizing Jerusalem as Israel's capital. Again, Jerusalem is the focus. It's not the West Bank so much. All right, watch this one here. Trump warns Israel, stop announcing new settlements. This came out on February 2nd, 2017. He's reiterated that again just recently. So it's not Jerusalem. This has nothing to do with Jerusalem. When it comes to Jerusalem, he still looks at Jerusalem being Israel's capital. And so does the people that are around him feel the exact same way. Trump will move embassy one congressman mission predicts. And again, who is that? That is Ron DeSantis that is predicting this. They went to Israel recently with the delegation. They also met with MK member Yehuda Glick, among other of the leaders there inside of Israel. So what are we looking at? Here's what's interesting, friends, and this is what really gets really interesting. Actually, before I go there, let me just show you this as well. Abbas, what is Abbas doing? He's meeting with also the King Jordan Abdullah II there, meeting with him, again, trying to do what? Stop to discuss a possible U.S. embassy move. And how can they do to stop it? How can they derail this? Well, I can tell you now, there's already a prophecy that Jordan is going to collapse as a nation as well. So we saw under the Obama administration the undermining of Syria and the bringing down of Syria, which, by the way, was prophecy that it would happen. I don't like the way that it happened, but it was prophecy that it would happen. So we may see Jordan follow in the same situation under a Trump administration over this whole prophecy sitting here in Zechariah. But watch what's even more interesting. Let's go back here to Zechariah just for a moment here. In that day will I make the governors of Judah like an earth. We read that, right? Let's go to verse 7. The Lord also shall save the tents of Judah first. That's actually the word in Hebrew is house of Judah. All right, let's just jump over there, verse 7 real quick, just so you can see that. The Lord shall also save Behushua, Yahuwah, et Heli, which is the tents of Yehudah. Okay, it is the tents. I'm sorry, I thought it said the house of Judah. Bereshon. So it is the tents of Judah first. All right? And that the glory of the house of David and the glory of the inhabitants of Jerusalem be not magnified above Judah. This is also where we find that God begins to, they look upon him whom they have pierced. Now I will pour upon the house of David and upon the inhabitants of Jerusalem the spirit of grace and supplication, and they shall look upon me because they have thrust him through, or because the one whom they have pierced, and they shall mourn for him as one that mourneth for his only son. So friends, here's what's fascinating right here about this prophecy in Zechariah and the not so much the move of the embassy to Jerusalem, but it's because the administration, the Trump administration, they have within their hearts that if they bless Israel, if they bless the house of Judah, God will bless them. And we are seeing this prophecy unfold right before our very eyes. And it seems like that the moving of the embassy is what's really brought this prophecy out to really highlighted it for our own eyes to be able to see. So if we're seeing this happening right now, then the next thing is going to happen is that Trump, if they make that embassy move, that's going to cause the neighbors of Israel to come against them. In that case, then the Trump administration will no doubt do something in a military response to back up Israel, to push back the neighbors, to devour them. And at that time there, this is when you will see that the two witnesses come on the scene. Israel begins to get their eyes open. They look upon the one whom they have thrust through, which is not so much his hands that were pierced, his hands and his feet, but the fact that his side was thrust through by the Roman soldier and the blood and the water separated from his body, showing that the waters of life, that he indeed was that rock that was smitten. There was a sign to Israel back in the wilderness journey when Moses was commanded, take the elders of Israel with you, go out there, smite the rock, that it bring forth its waters. And when the waters of the rock came gushing out, we know the story. They lived. They received that waters of life. And Yeshua was a sign to Israel that he was the rock and was being smitten when his water separated from his blood. We are on the verge of watching prophecy unfold itself, and in a way that I never thought would have happened. I'm Stephen Ben-Nun. You're watching Israeli News Live. Shalom, and God bless you all. Thank you for watching. Don't forget, we have our trip March the 28th. That's only a few weeks away, less than 3, about 2.5 weeks away there. Be speaking. Rabbi Yehuda Glick will also be speaking here at the conference. Several people will be speaking there. If you'd like to be a part of that, you can do so. Go to IsraeliNewsLive.org. We have a place where you can donate. So many of you have been so kind to help in making this possible. And we thank you for your kindness and your donations in making this trip possible. So anyway, thank you again, and God bless you. We'll also post in the link here below the website, the Pesach 17, I believe that's .com, but I'll post a link for you there where you can go. You can see the lineup of speakers at this meeting here if you would like to attend. Shalom.